seems like everyone in the South loves country music, and if you don't, it seems like you hear it everywhere anyway. But what's the theology behind the music? Is there a message there? It's what we're talking about right now. Welcome back to Right Now. We are excited today to be talking about country music, and I'm super excited to have Josh Talkington here. Josh, you used to have a radio call-in show or morning show.
I was a co-host of a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee.
In Nashville, Tennessee, that had to deal with country music.
Correct.
So you listened to a lot of country music, you studied it, and you probably met a few people.
I did, yeah. We would have some stop by the studio from time to time, and a lot of them were kind of newer artists who now are big superstars. And every once in a while, we would get a big star who would come in, like a Keith Urban or a Brad Paisley or Kenny Chesney. It chokes you up when you heard about those guys. You got all choked up. So yeah, it was a wonderful city, music city, and we were all about country music, and I just always kind of was attracted to that genre.
Why do you think country music is so popular? Because it really, especially in the South, does seem to be popular.
Storytelling, like real life, raw storytelling. It may not be exactly your life, but it's something that maybe you can relate to. There's some honesty, and so maybe it sounds a little goofy and it's not as catchy maybe as hip-hop or pop or rock or whatever, but there's just this honesty from way back with Johnny Cash and Hank Williams and all those guys. There was an honesty in the music.
So if people haven't listened to it, that's one of the things that they would first pick up maybe, is that there's more storytelling there.
Yeah.
Than, I think the other thing that I see is that, like, if you listen to other kinds of music, which I don't listen to a lot of other kinds, but like rap, oftentimes it's about, I pulled myself up from my bootstraps of the hood I grew up in, and then
you should be a rapper based just on that little segment.
And then it's that extreme, or it's talking about, now I've got all the wealth and the riches and the women and the cars, and it's both extremes. Whereas country music sort of seems to fit more middle America in some ways.
And probably in the last, I would say, 5 years or so, it shifted somewhere. It sounds to me a little too popish, and it's tough to recognize certain artists because they all kind of sound the same. But back probably up until the year 2000 or so, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you knew exactly what you were getting. You knew it was going to be kind of twangy and kind of nasally, but there would be a story there somewhere.
Yeah, so didn't Taylor Swift start out as a country singer?
She would, and they still claim her.
They claim her? But she's kind of on the pop charts now? Or
yeah. And so she was country to the core back then. She was singing about Tim McGraw was one of her first big songs, and so but the country world loved her. She broke in at like age 13 or 14.
Wow.
I'll remember just a quick story on that. I was doing a country TV show, and Taylor was probably 13 or 14 at the time. Nobody knew her, had no songs out, so we interviewed her, and her publicist said, I want to show you on my computer here, here's 100 songs that she's already written at that age, 100 songs.
13.
And our producers of the TV show, shows you how smart sometimes we can be, decided that the interview with her, it was a good interview, but she wasn't famous enough to use on the show. So we didn't use her on the show, and the next year, she was just blowing up. I mean, everywhere, right?
Wow. Did they save the tape and run it later?
Probably not. No, we probably denied that we ever shot the interview. That wasn't us. And I think we did Carrie Underwood the same way. So, yeah, we got a good track record.
That's really sad, because you would be known for that 13-year-old interview. Well, one of the things that we want to get to in country music is some of the themes in it, and talk about, it's one of those rare music types, I think, that talks about God and faith in ways. So we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I just kind of want to ask you some questions about that and see if we can kind of explore kind of the theology of country music, the storytelling that's in there, and the faith element. So we're going to talk more about this today, and I'm so excited that Josh is here because he's had this background and he's been really familiar with it. I have a son who loves country music, and maybe you're a country music fan, but even if you're not, you're going to want to stay tuned through this break and join us afterwards as we talk more about the theology of country music. Welcome back. We're talking about the theology, if you will, which maybe is too big of a word, but of country music, because it seems like there's a lot of themes in country music, Josh, and you as a former host of a radio show that was all with country music, and even TV shows, which I didn't realize, those themes would come up. So what are some of the themes we keep finding over and over in country music?
It's dirt roads.
Dirt roads.
Right? Dirt roads. Pickup trucks.
Pickup trucks.
Beer or whiskey or whatever the drink of choice is. And Jesus, which is all kind of interesting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're all sort of in the same song together.
I think there was a song a few years ago that was about if you could have a beer with Jesus.
Really?
This song, if you could sit down and have a beer with Jesus and talk to him. Now that gets you into this whole debate, is having one beer a sin and all this whole thing. But just to mix that, if you had a beer with Jesus, what would you talk about?
Right.
That's kind of, in a nutshell, I think where the country music world is.
That's kind of crazy. I think that we do see in country music a lot of the same themes repeat and repeat. My son's a big country music fan, and he'll talk about how literally the lyrics are almost identical between songs.
Right.
And I heard a joke, which I thought was rather cute. It was said that what happens when you play country music backwards?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah. But go ahead. I don't want to steal your punchline. I don't want to steal the punchline.
When you play country music backwards, you get back your wife, you get back your dog, and you get back your truck.
Get back the truck. Yeah, exactly.
In most country songs, you would lose them.
They got repoed a lot, and in some cases too. And I think people don't realize that too about some country artists. You hear them on the radio or see them on TV. Well, they're a big star. They're a millionaire. But for some of these guys, they are 2 or 3 records in. We'll still call them records, but 2 or 3 CDs in before they make any sort of money. They're still, the label is paying for everything, paying for the tour, paying for the buses, and for all the production people. So by the time they get all that paid back, they're 2 or 3 records in before they're starting to make some money. So you'll see on some occasions, some country artists have been doing it for 10, 15 years, and they still haven't really made it yet.
Wow.
You know, they're still making music, and they're on the radio, but they haven't really made it yet.
Yeah. And is that because the music industry's changed with,
I just think it's tough to make money.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's buying albums or CDs anymore. You may go to iTunes or whatever, but there are so many free options, unfortunately, to get the music.
Or they have monthly subscription services as opposed to owning the music.
Right, and then so if you didn't write the song, the writers are making some pretty good money if it goes to #1, but if you're getting no royalties off the writing, but I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of those guys you hear on the radio haven't made any money yet, at least not a significant amount of money yet. Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess you sort of think like if they're famous on the radio, they must be rich.
Right. I remember a guy by the name of Lee Brice, who's a big star right now, but he wasn't quite yet, and he had a couple of hits, but he was selling out some shows, and people loved him. But I remember I was with him one day, we were shooting a video, and he got the call that he finally got an endorsement deal where they gave him a free truck, and he was so excited. And I'm looking at it thinking, you've been here for 10 years or whatever it was, and he was just then starting to get some momentum. But now he's got #1 hits, and he's on the radio, and he's on the ACM Awards and all those different things. But just shows you, it's not always what you think it is, just when you look at it on the surface.
Well, and that's I one time had the opportunity to learn about writing songs from a songwriter in Nashville who had written a song that had won some kind of national award for some well-known female singer who I don't remember.
Right. But she was that well-known.
Yeah, not to me. Let's put it that way. I'll be honest. It's not my area of expertise. But what he talked about was that you start kind of where the average person is with the song, and so it's a guy getting laid off from a job. It's a guy in a hotel room. It's a guy at Walmart. He's sort of, that's the way he would start these songs. It seems like it's intentional to sort of connect with people.
Yeah, the realness. Like we are, or at least we were, where you are right now, right? So we're going to have this connection, and then they usually go down that path of drinking and smoking, and then I'm going to go to church on Sunday morning, which is always kind of.
So is that when they do? And there's a lot of faith-based things. They'll say Jesus, which we don't see that unless it's in some use of profanity in other kinds of music other than Christian music. We see them talking about going to church. We see them talking about that they believe in God. That there's these sort of declarative statements about that. Are they making fun of that, or is that something that they really believe?
I mean, I don't know all of them in their personal life.
I know you can't speak for every country music artist ever.
I would hope anyway. If you remember way back in the day, so we would have country artists who were singing Amazing Grace and Old Rugged Cross, and we would play those on Christian stations, and we would even consider that a Christian genre, even though it came from a country artist. So now we flipped it, and the country artist is more honest about where they are, and they still mention the things they've always mentioned in their songs in reference to Jesus and God and that relationship, but now there's more honesty to where they are. So does that make it wrong? They're just honest about where they are. So I don't see it as them making fun or them ridiculing or whatever. I think most of them, and if you go around a lot of churches, maybe not the Sunday morning service, but if you go around a lot of churches who have some untraditional times, a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, you will see a lot of those country artists and country industry people, producers and whatnot, in churches on Sundays and Saturdays.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I look at, and I say we've got this country Christian music that's nice and why whitewashed and family friendly for the most part, but it sometimes doesn't feel real honest. It feels like what we aspire maybe to be, you know, like holy and praising Jesus all the time, you know. Country music,
don't do that?
I would be lying if I said I did. So
I'm surprised I'm able to make it today because this is Thursday or whatever day it is. This is the day I praise him all day, nonstop. So I'm surprised I had time for this. So so you're saying the realness of that, it's maybe not as real as a country.
Right. Sometimes maybe the country songs feel more real. Like maybe that's one of the connection points is it feels like, you know, you said storytelling. A lot of the storytelling starts in one place and then it talks about this this fall or this sinfulness or this something that I regret happening, and then it ends with, you know, a hopeful note or a look to the future or something. And so that feels like my story a little bit more than just sort of like praising Jesus all day.
And that's there's a Trace Atkins song that says he's somewhere between George Jones and Jesus. That's kind of where he's between those two things. And you hear songs that are just that honesty. I'm somewhere between my Saturday night and my Sunday morning. I'm trying to get it right. And I think there's one song, a Tim McGraw song, that has a lyric that says it's a long, long way from Sunday morning to Saturday night. And it's just that real journey that they're on. So I guess the question kind of becomes, can that be Christian? Can that still be Christian? Or should the Christian songs be a little more real and say, I'm also somewhere between George Jones and Jesus. You know, I'm in that struggle. I don't know what the answer is to that, but I don't think you can look at a song and because a song's not Christian. Right. A song's not saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Spirit. Like a song's not Christian. But can you look at this guy singing that song and make a judgment on him? And I'm not sure that you can.
Well, I don't want to make a judgment on anybody, but I want to figure out like what's the point of the song. Like if like one of the things I'm very conscious of is I don't want to sing along to lyrics I don't agree with. You know, I mean that's just something I choose to do because it just feeds my mind in places that I don't want to go. So you know when I'm listening to country music, I can resonate with that. I can understand the kinds of things that they're going through. And it feels very real. Like we have had at our church, my husband works in the parking lot directing traffic in. We have had people showing up drunk. They literally have come from the bar Saturday night to church on Sunday morning. They're stumbling out of their car. You know, and as a church, we have a couple of choices at that point, right? We can go, you know what, you shouldn't be doing that. You need to leave. You need to go sober up. What normally we do is we pass them off to a specific staff member who can take them in. And sometimes they say, I just didn't want to miss church. So to them, there's this drinking that was going on Saturday night. Who knows what else, right? And yet somehow they want to be in church on Sunday morning. It's important for them to find a way there. And I think country music sort of expresses that tension maybe in a way that Christian music doesn't.
So that's maybe the reality. And then the Christian music is maybe the idea.
That's what it feels like a little bit to me. You know, like that. Like I would love to be to say like I do praise Jesus all day long, and I never question him, and I put my faith and trust in him all the time. And when I sing those songs, long in the car, or whatever, that's what I'm hoping to do. But like, for example, I remember one time I was driving in the car and I don't know, there was some song and the lyrics were something like, I'll do whatever you want me to, Lord. I'll do, you send me to Africa, I'll go to Africa. You tell me to do whatever you want to do. And there's like this homeless guy on the side of the road, right? And so I'm like, I don't want him to see that I looked at him because then like he'll come over.
Because I'm going to Africa.
So I turn over and turn up the song so I can sing the lyrics louder of how I'll do anything you want, and it's not until I drive through that light that I'm like, such a horrible person. Like I'm like here God was going like, okay, do it. He's right here in front of you and you're ignoring him. And turn up the song so I can sing the lyrics a little bit.
And don't make eye contact, whatever you do. So with your son who loved country music, especially when maybe he was a little younger, say a teenager, were there these restrictions of these are songs, I heard that one song and I know you really like it, you shouldn't listen to it, or did you just kind of take it like listen to country music if you want?
So from the time he was very young, it was still in the point where you had to buy songs on iTunes kind of thing versus listening to him through Spotify and some of those other services. So from the time he was very young, what I would do is I would say, if you want to buy a song, you need to look up the lyrics and you need to read that. Because I wanted him to learn to make choices on his own. I didn't want to, so even this was middle school, maybe even upper elementary. And I would say, you need to look at the lyrics and you need to decide if those are the kinds of things you want going around in your head or not, and then do it. Now, the problem with that is that sometimes the lyrics were horrible things, but he just didn't know that, They would say a word, and to me that meant something very sexual, but he didn't see it and do it that way.
And thank God he didn't know yet.
Well, but then the problem was he was going around singing it all the time. And,
in church, in youth group.
Other
You've got a problem with your son. He sang a special tonight at youth group.
What kind of a mom is she that she's like, when I thought I was doing good. So that's part of the problem, too, is like, we want to help our kids grow up to make good choices. choices and to make their own choices.
Yeah.
But hidden meanings or suggestive things, you know, it's...
Yeah, it's tough, too, and I have this thing, too, because there have been so many Christian artists that have, because we all stumble, we all fall. There have been so many that have made horrible life choices, right? And then we have their music playing. Is that sort of the same thing? Because there's their real life, but there's their song. But the song doesn't mirror real life sometimes. I'm not throwing a blanket statement over all of that, but sometimes it doesn't mirror real life. And then in the country world, maybe there's the reality, and it does directly mirror the real life. So, so who's to say?
And we don't know, right? We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. There was a famous, well, I don't know, locally famous Christian musician who was very popular among the youth. My kid had his albums, sang his songs, he played in our church, the whole bit. And then it came out that he'd been having, you know, a marital affair since basically before he was married, and you know, it had gone on for years. Now had kids and that kind of thing. And I know people in the church took him aside and kind of walked along with him through that. And I remember thinking about that. One day I walked into church and there was this guy, this was, you know, 2 years later or something, there was this guy singing. I'm like, that guy's got an amazing voice. And they introduced a lot of the musicians, but they didn't introduce him. And I was like, that's kind of awkward. And then the guy who was leading the singing got something in his throat, and he's kind of like, you need to take over. And this guy's singing, and I'm like, wow, he's so good. Then all of a sudden it occurred to me, oh, this is the guy. And at that moment, my thought, I mean, I know a lot of people have different thoughts. Some people would say he should never be back in church again. He should never be a role model again. But at that moment, it brought tears to my eyes, because I thought, what this tells me is if I screw up, if I totally do whatever the worst thing is, my church is still going to walk alongside me. They're still going to help me heal from it, and they're still going to help me to come back to use my gifts. Because, like, you know, you don't want him to be in a place where he's doing the same things again, or be where he's idolized, and maybe that was part of the problem. But at the same time, you don't want him to dig ditches if he's really got this gorgeous voice that, you know.
And if he has a desire to change, right? And thank God you have a church like that, because so many would have been done. And so we do a lot of college ministry, and I know with us, our kids will have some major screw-ups. I mean, it's just the way that it goes. So we'll be putting a service together, an event together, and say we have a young lady, which we did a few months ago, who was going to lead on the worship team, and she got caught with weed. Okay. And so many adults are, well, we're done with her. We can't use her. She can't sing. Well, I want to go talk to her. Is this a one-time thing? What happened? What's the real story? And so that's nice to hear. There are still churches where if you screw up and you want to get back on the horse, so to speak, like, we're right here with you, because regardless if your church is with you or not, God's still there for you. Like, God is all about your redemption and your forgiveness and all that. So it's unfortunate more churches aren't.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is that what you did in considering that is you showed her grace, and what my church does, they showed him grace. And so if we don't show grace, then we're, you know, as a church, why would we expect we'd ever get it? And so it's better to hide our sins, to not talk about them, to leave the church, not come back. But if we see grace being modeled, then we know how to model it. We know how to show it to other people. I think that the judgment is on people and their behaviors is not so much. But at the same time, again, I want to be careful about the songs I'm singing and supporting and the artists that I'm supporting.
Because you find yourself later in the day, whether you want to or not, it's going around and you're saying it, you're singing it, and that whole thing. It's probably not going to, at this point in life, influence your lifestyle.
No.
But as a young person, it might. As a teenager, it might. That was cool because they did that. I'm not one to put too much weight on that, but I think if they hear that over and over and over again, and it's something that's not along with what foundation that you're trying to establish in that young person, whatever that may be, it's probably not real healthy.
Well, so for example, we talk about kids playing video games, right? And we say that if you play too much of it, you become sort of immune to the violence that's there, you know, and it makes kids more violent. And there's research that shows these kinds of things. So if I go around singing, you know, my cheating heart's looking somewhere else, you know, does that make me more inclined to look somewhere else, to not be, you know, a faithful wife? I don't know.
I played Madden for like 12 hours straight, Madden football, and I wanted to join the NFL. After that. So I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared for it. See, I hadn't prepared my body for it. So maybe this cheating heart, maybe your heart starts cheating, whether you know it or not. I do, though, miss the old country artists who would just flat out sing a Christian song. And Vince Gill was kind of the last of that dying breed when he sang like Go Sing High, Go Tell High on the Mountain and all of those, and he sings some Christian songs. I miss that group because to hear Johnny Cash sing a Christian song was just something pretty unique and special.
All right, so you work with a lot of kids, and you have, you know, you're always probably probably looking for conversations and how to do that. Is there a way we can use like what comes up in a country music song to talk about things? So, you know, I think there's a song out now. It's like John Deere, John Cougar, and John 3:16 or something like that. Can we use that to talk about what John 3:16 means, or is that like stretching it too far?
Look, like people in youth ministry especially, you are looking for anything to get a young person to come in. My dad has been a pastor and in ministry for 40-something years, and he has always said, I'll do anything like just this side of illegal to get kids to come to church, right? Because there has to be that attention grabber. So I don't see any problem with that at all. Now, if there are like some serious problems in the lyrics in that song, that's probably a problem. But if they are listening to that song, and the kids that we deal with, they're not your typical church kids. They're kids from really rough environments. So if they come in and they're listening to a rap song, and that's their favorite song, I might spin that on them and say, let's look at this lyric that so-and-so, whatever rapper said, and let's talk about that. And that at least will get them interested in a conversation instead of just on their phone Snapchatting and texting. At least they want to talk about anything. And I think with young people, getting them just talking in a regular conversation, because if you're around a group of young people and there's 12 of them, they're all on their phones looking at what somebody else is doing. So I'm all for anything that will just get them to open their mouth and verbalize something to you.
And I have to say that actually happens with my son. Like there's a couple of rap songs that he likes, and they talk about difficulties with their parent relationship, or they talk about some other things. And he can't wait when we're together in the car to go, Mom, I want you to listen to this song. And then he goes into all the detail of explaining why this happened and why this guy and why he wrote this song and how. My husband has no patience for this. He's like, I don't want to listen to it, you know. But what it does open up conversation between me and my son that my husband doesn't have, because I'm willing to listen and to hear him, and then we have some place to start talking about some of those things.
And you would have never had that conversation without him bringing it. Right. You couldn't have taken it.
No, I would never have gone, hey, here's a rap song. You need to, no. I had to be open to the kinds of things he is. Do I like that music? No. Does it pound in my head? Yes. Does it distract me while I'm driving? Yes. Like all the reasons I don't want to listen to it. But I really want to hear what he's thinking about.
The payoff.
And
I got to talk to my son.
And hear what he was thinking about that.
That's great. That's wonderful.
That's an important thing. So I think that everything, like you said, there's nothing that it's not devil's music, right? Nothing is devil's music. It's how we use things, right? I know a lot of. I knew actually a youth minister who used to say, you can engage in any media you want, but I want you to do is tell me what the lie is in there. Look for the lie. And so the lie is that if you hurt somebody, it's all over by the end of the song, you know, that during the bridge, everything will be made up and we'll be happy ever after. You know, that's the lie in that song.
So you're still going, we're still talking about idea versus reality, right? Because the reality is kids are looking at things online they shouldn't be. Even the best of kids is at least tempted to do that, whether they take action or whatever. Kids are looking at things they shouldn't. They're watching things they shouldn't. They're reading things. They're listening to things they shouldn't. So are we going to deal with that and say, okay, we know that that's what you're doing, and then even what's worse, adults, we know that's what you're doing. So now can we be honest about it? Can we talk about it? So is the worst thing you did today listen to a country song that talked about beer in it? Is that what kept you from God? Because if it was, then that's probably a real problem in your own life, that's the one thing. So it wasn't the pornography, and it wasn't this or that you shouldn't have looked at, and the violent movies that you let the 6-year-old kid watch. It was that one song. So I just think the more honest we get about what people are already struggling with and already going through, I think the better off we're just going to be.
And that's one of the things that country music seems to do pretty well, doesn't it? It's to be honest about the condition. And again, from the songwriter that I met, that's what he was trying to do, is like, where are people at, you know, and what are they struggling with, and what are they dealing with, and how can I give them hope at the end of it? And so he was a Christian songwriter, but it was basically he was using that medium to tell the gospel story, if you will, not using any gospel terms in that case. But to do that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. And so it gives great conversation, like you said. So we're talking about country music and the theology behind it, if you want to use a big word for something as simple as what's the story saying and what's the message. So we're going to talk more about this. We hope you'll be right back after this break. So, welcome back. We've been talking about country music, and whether you love it or whether you're not really a fan of it, there's really some interesting things about it that's unique to any other kind of music. And you were just telling me during the break that one of the things that you think is unique about country music is the storytelling.
Definitely the storytelling. I know we talked about that before, but I think that's the thing that we all, you pick up on a good story, and that's whether you're a journalist or whatever, you love a good story. Whether it's about you or not, the fact that it's somebody's real and raw story. And I always found it interesting when I was co-hosting radio shows or hosting radio shows, I would always have this segment of my Christian friends population, because I have friends that aren't Christian. Imagine that. That would have a lot of my Christian friends, and some of them, a very small percentage, would always kind of look down. Well, I can't believe you're doing country. Like, why are you doing country?
Like they didn't think you as a Christian should be doing that?
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing country. And that always kind of baffled me, you know, that because I feel like you can be in ministry wherever you are, first off. Yeah. And there was so much, you know, goodness going on in that community. The country music community loves each other. There are so many things they're doing, whether it be with St. Jude's or with other places. And in Nashville, it was Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. And so many things they do as a community that are the acts that we're supposed to be living out. Yeah. And we get focused sometimes so much on, well, they talked about whiskey in a song, and they talked about this and that, and they cheated. Well, maybe that really is what happened in their life. Right. And is it wrong for them to tell their truth? And I just never thought that it was. I never thought that it was.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the key things is that stories help us to put ourselves in somebody else's position, to sort of walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. And even in a short 3.5-minute song, we can find out, you know, maybe I agree with that, maybe I don't, but it sort of allows us to get in there and do it. So if you're not a fan, or if you think like, oh, I shouldn't be listening to that, I would just ask you to set aside your prejudice for a minute and see, is there something that I can pull out of here? Is there a truth here? Is there a way I can show grace to somebody? Is there a way I can show grace to somebody who likes country music and maybe I don't? Because I think there's something we can learn from everyone, and we can learn a lot from people who are telling us their stories, and it can help us to understand our own story better. The key is you get to create your own story. You get to make the choices in your life, and so make a better story if you don't like the story that you're listening to. But that's what we want to help you do right here on Right Now. We want to bring topics and ideas and new thoughts to you and encourage you to be a part of them. So join us by emailing us, by sending us on Facebook a note, or by just watching us the next time we're on. We're so glad you're here, and we're really thankful for you.